Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. Really excited for today's episode because we're going to be talking about omnichannel communication within the banking and the credit union world. So come and join us and listen to our guest. Everyone, thanks for joining. Today we are joined by Charlie Peterson from Allied Solutions. Charlie, thanks for joining our podcast.
Hey, James, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. It's always great to catch up with people in the industry.
Absolutely. Charlie, tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about Allied Solutions.
Oh boy, two of my favorite subjects, right? Allied, we are a broker of solutions across the financial institution marketplace. We've got over 4,000 clients. We're really consultants, if you will, but on a number of different subjects. You name it, and we've got people that we work with in those areas. Best way I could describe the relationship with Allied is, we're the general physician and we refer to specialists, the cardiovascular folks, the dermatologists, et cetera. And I've been with either the parent company, CUInsight, or Allied Solutions for 35 years. Half of that time I've been in sales management, and I'm now Senior VP of Strategic Innovation. So some would call that think tank type work, development and innovation, but we're having a lot of fun along those lines.
And I found Charlie again through the CUInsight. So talk to us a little bit about what you write on CUInsight.
Well, we do a lot with CUInsight. Our marketing area is fantastic. I work with an individual named Emily Miller, and Emily is so strong on her relationships with CUInsight and CU Today and a number of other trade publications. But this most recent one was really about what is the best way to build a omni-channel inside your organization, large or small. And at the end of the day, what really matters is that you're doing something and always looking to improve. And so that was the article I think that you read, and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I'm a marketer at heart, right? I've done marketing for a really long time, and I think that the phrase omni-channel sometimes just, I don't know why, but it sometimes rubs people the wrong way, but I don't know why it does, because we all like to be communicated to in multiple ways, and we have to do it off of the preference. But before we get into that, let's talk about why is this important? Why is omni-channel communication important right now?
Well, we all are of different generations, at least mostly, and I'm certain I got a few years on you, but at the end of the day, I grew up with running to the phone because it rang and there was 5 other kids in my family who wanted to answer it first. And, the mail came once a day. And so we go down the path and how those channels have all changed. And my children who are in their 20s, they don't even know I don't say they don't know. When they lived in the United States, they didn't know where the mailbox was because they didn't care. And so computers at age 9, cell phones at age 11, and that's the only thing they know. And so what you and I might talk about, hey, I sent you an email, they'd say, Charlie or Dad, I got a better chance of sending you a carrier pigeon than to wait for your email response. It's, and that kind of typifies the millennial and how they look at things, and even the Z generation, et cetera. And I'm one of those baby boomers that I'm trying to hang on and be relevant. And I think they're the ones that push me to do that.
I love what you just said, because we've been really focused with almost everything that we're doing at CRMNEXT on the fact that there needs to be more education around Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, right? Because financial institutions have to be able to personalize the experience to them. And it is unique. It's very unique. How they get in front of them, how they communicate with them is definitely unique. I've probably told this story over a dozen times now on the podcast, but we went through a whole loan application and moving over to a different credit union from a big commercial bank, all over text and email. 100%. There wasn't a single phone call that happened with it. And I was like, holy smokes, if I could do all my interactions like that, I would do it. Because for me, and you're going to be totally different, right? But for me, I was like, man, if this doesn't interrupt my family time, then I'm all for doing it when I have the time.
The interaction time has really changed, hasn't it, in COVID? I wave across the street to my neighbor as they run to get a mask, thinking I might be spreading something their way. But with Uber delivering food to my door, any kind of food that I want, minus, say, ice cream, still in a state that I would want to buy it, everything can be done from my living room or my office or my back porch, wherever I might be. And that has been hurried upon us as consumers, meaning, I think the number was right around 35% were doing mobile banking prior to COVID. We were engaged with the mobile banking arms, the technology folks, to bring that number up because it drove efficiencies and it drove, obviously, the expense savings that go with those efficiencies. And as a result of COVID, the number is now well over 50% usage. And I've seen it as high in some organizations as high as 70% of their customer base or their membership base they're doing mobile banking. And the large percentage of them anticipate still doing it. That's not good news to the organization that had plans for 2020 to build 19 new branches.
You're right. And not only that, but all these people are at home, which means you have to be able to communicate on the back end to them in different ways that you've never been able to communicate to them. So let's talk about, what do you feel like is the most effective communication channel?
Well, from my eyes, and again, it really depends on my age and who I'm communicating to. I think back to the days when, I got hired 35 years ago and, I had to go through personality test. It wasn't Myers-Briggs, but it was something close there too. And I have to approach the people I'm talking to in a specific sort of way. What turns them off? What drives them? What pushes them? Some people just don't want the detail. They just want give me the high 36,000 foot level. If I want to get down in the weeds, then I'll get there, but I don't want it. I say that because there's plenty of people that thrive on mail and newsletter communication. Yeah, granted, maybe I'm getting my statements via email now, but my wife still gets statements in the mail as a backup. I'm going, why? You want somebody to steal it? I mean, because mailbox theft is high. Whereas I kind of grew up with email. I remember when they handed me my first computer and I said, what do I do with my yellow legal pad? Because that's where I do all my work. Our one device in the office was a Hermes typewriter, and it had one little bar that had some digital LED lights on it. And we thought that was high tech. The point I'm trying to make is email is pretty important to the likes of you and me, or it has been. But if you want the overarching answer, what is the best? It's texting. And the example that I'll give you is this. I did a leadership seminar in Hawaii, of all places. Imagine that. That's why we had standing room only, because it was on the big island of Hawaii. But when I asked the question, how many of these CEOs and board chairs, how many of them answered email every day, less than half the hands went up. And when I went the other way and said, how many of you don't answer email at all? And there was a good 12 plus hands that went up. And I was like, you're the ones that upset me. I'm sending you these, very well thought out emails and you're not even answering. How many of you have somebody filter that out for you before you answer? Hands went up. Then I went to texting. Now remember, texting 3 years ago was a big thing, but not like it is today. And there is over 8 billion texts that are sent every day in the United States on cell phones. That is incredible. And when you consider that 98% of the texts are read within 9 minutes of receipt, holy cow. Why would I be doing much of anything else? Why would I send a piece of mail that's going to have spider webs on it by the time I go grab it in my mailbox? Why would I send an email that's lost in 250 that I got just this week? Whereas if I get a text in a meeting, I look down and boom, I can see it. It's short, it's succinct, and I can answer it in less than about 8 words. And if in fact there's a link, I can even hit the link and it goes to my earbud. In my case, it's a hearing aid, but it doubles as an earbud. So that is the most powerful communication method there is. And with the millennials and then, the Z generation, you got any other ideas? Good luck. That's all I can say.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with you, though.
That was a long answer to a short question.
No, but it's perfect because it's 100% true, especially now. And I want to talk about sort of this new, I hate saying this, but the new normal, right? And with everybody working, how has text changed since we've done that?
My guess is the 8 billion number I shared has probably increased dramatically. And I'll tell you what, I'm diamond on Delta. I mean, that's your airline, I'm sure, being in the Salt Lake City area. And that means I fly a lot, or I did. All of a sudden, I can hit 6 states in the morning. I don't need to get on a plane. I don't need hotels. I don't need any of that. But while I'm on whether it's a WebEx or Microsoft Teams, I can also be on my phone answering text messages. Okay, so has the effectiveness of COVID, or has COVID brought the effectiveness of all of us as doers to a new level? My answer would be yes, because I can do videos in the sense of communication with my clients and or business partners. I can communicate with family via my phone at the very same time. What business meeting have you ever sat in that you can do that? Not very often. Now, you can always see the CEO who takes his phone from the table, puts it under the table like I'm not going to see it. And do I think I have his attention anymore? No, not really. So the point is, I think it's brought productivity to a new heightened level. All of a sudden, the mobile bankers, they don't need my help with the use of what we call smart video to get people to utilize mobile banking in a much larger sort of way. That's going to happen through just pure generations growing older and not remembering the rotary phone, that sort of thing. I think you get what I'm saying. People are going to pass on, and we're going to be in a different era. It'll probably end up popping up on a dashboard in my windshield is what I'll be seeing my email on, or my videos on. It's kind of like Back to the Future, Part 2.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring this up, because you can see this on my video, but I've had to text my wife just to make sure she knows that I'm on a podcast to try and keep my kids quiet, right? So, I mean, I couldn't do that a while ago, right? Like, you have to be able to do that. And sometimes it requires or I would even say multitasking. Sometimes that's frowned upon, but it really depends on the context. I love the fact that just kind of piggybacking off of, the experience that I had with the credit union in COVID, right? It was all through text and email, and almost all of it was done through text. So it was one email welcoming me, saying, "Hey, how's it going? We want to make sure you got everything going. Here's how you can reach out to me via text or phone call." And I said, "We can do this through text?" I was shocked, but it's surprising to me how many financial institutions and even businesses in general do not communicate with their prospects and their members and their customers through that channel, when it is so open and ready for people to use.
Yep, you're exactly right.
So let's talk about what you think the biggest mistakes in communication that you've seen in your career and just in general. What are the big mistakes that people make?
I think they plan too far out in the future. I think they get out over the tips of their skis, so to speak. They think they know what's coming. I call that future casting. And if you do too much future casting, you're not going to stay relevant, because we think back to how technology has grown in our lifetime. The expectation that my daughters have on technology growth is dramatically different. It's light years different than mine. And things, when's the iPhone 12 coming? Or, when is, 12? Can we just go to 14? Well, we need to count in the order that they release them. But if you think about I had a Mac computer, and I don't know why, but a client of mine, their name was Seattle Telco back then, and they had Macs, and they called them Sheila. And Sheila was the name that they gave it, almost as if, some organizations name their chat bot that they've got in their call centers, et cetera, that's got a human name. But I'll never forget when they gifted me one of those, because they were moving on to the new Mac inside their organization. And that was unusual in its own right, that they were not on, IBM type computers or dumb terminals, as we used to call them. My kid would say, "Dumb terminal? What the heck is that?" It's a big light bulb. But, things have changed so dramatically and moving so quick. I think we get caught up in what we think things are going to be. And if there's one lesson that COVID has provided us, it's that if you think you know what's going to happen in a month, you might. That's a pretty good short-term bet. But 12 months from now, I'm going to bet against you. I think that we will find that our strategic planning will become strategic adjustment planning. We're adjusting our plan, and we might be adjusting it monthly. Maybe it's quarterly, but we're going to have to stay fluid. We're going to have some elasticity in our ability to make moves. And for somebody to say to me, Charlie, we can't do that. Our plans are set. Matter of fact, 2021 might be set. My first thought in my head is, well, you might not be here in 2021 if you're that set in your plans. And, people start scratching their head. And I go, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but that may come off in that regard. But at the end of it, we really don't know what is coming because the technology companies aren't telling us, are they? They don't tell us. They got to milk what they can out of the current piece of equipment that I've bought. And then the software side, and the application side, that just fuels it. Bill Gates did not look at this little computer in my hand, my cell phone, and say, that is a mini computer or a laptop. When he said there'll be a personal computer in every home, he had no idea how right he was. The answer is there's probably 12 to 15 in every home. When you look at the unused cell phones that are in drawers, computers that are no longer used because they're outdated and have Windows 7 on them. So you get the point. So that was a long answer to a very short question. What mistakes are you made? Don't get too far out over your skis. And by the way, don't be hiring people just based on experience. Hire people based on their outlook, because combined with experience, outlook, youth is a good thing to have at the C-suite level because they will challenge you at every turn. Couldn't be better.
Ooh, I love it. Those are some truth bombs right there, Charlie.
Well, that's from raising 3 daughters.
So, we've talked a lot about mistakes people can make, how this has changed since people have been working from home, why we feel like text is an effective communication channel. Let's talk about the data that financial institutions have. They have data on their members and their customers. So let's say, for example, they're not tracking communication preference. What would be your advice to these financial institutions if they're not tracking that? And then if they are, how can they effectively use it?
Well, again, it comes down to what we think we know. And, I look at the big banks. If I hit an ATM machine like Bank of America or U.S. Bank, and they always, if I've been there before, even though I'm not a customer, they know what preference I have for my withdrawal. That's artificial intelligence right there, because, that's cultivating a potential relationship with me beyond charging me $2 to pull money out of an ATM, unless, of course, I'm part of a credit union that waives that for me. I think you can see, though, what I'm saying. It's like I have to harness that data. And I think the biggest mistake that I come across is when people believe they can build it themselves. And that doesn't mean they can't, because they can. But what about life's terms coming at you? What if somebody has a family emergency to the point where they need to move across the country? What if that was your data scientist? All of a sudden, your plans are on hold. And you can't afford that. You need a third-party outsourcing arrangement in most cases. I'm not saying in all cases, but that puts you in a place where you can truly start to harness your data. You've got a third-party relationship. That's all they do, and they're really good at it, versus somebody who's running your whole network, a whole bunch of IT people, collection people. I think you get the drift of where I'm going with that. You can't afford a chink in the armor, especially when it comes to security these days. You've got to have a good big data plan and a good way to analyze and use it in such a way. That is moving in a very fast way. Now, we used to be the second largest investor in a CUSO called On Approach. And On Approach was big data. Now, Trellance bought that from the credit unions and the CUSO, and it's out there now under the Trellance, and what they've done with it has been dramatic and impressive. there's not many places for financial institutions to go to. You can go to Radden. They're such a high quality brand. And then you've got, of course, the competitors that we run into in the big data side. But at the end of it, it's got to fit your organization. It's got to fit the kind of, does the glove fit, so to speak? It has to fit where you're going and how you're doing it. So I laugh at when I look at a application for a loan at a dealership. They're an independent when it's not being done via technology. Here, fill this out. What? I'm out the door. I don't like dealerships anyways. But when it's an indirect app immediately, you just know because they're standard, loan apps. And if it's going through Cuddle or any other indirect channel, they're asking for my email or my phone number and my cell. Wait a minute. How many people have a landline and a cell phone these days? Now, I'm not saying that we don't, because I do, but mine's an emergency. And somebody said, "What's your home number?" I said, "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "Well, I don't give it out." So it's an emergency. If my cell phone goes down, I'm going to use the landline. It's like behind the glass and I'll break it to get to it. The point I'm trying to make is you have to really go back and say, what information do I need from my customer, my member, and where am I going to put it in the way of importance? Where am I going to put it in my, whether it be Salesforce.com or any other, customer relationship model? That's the key piece. Where do I put it? Because the person that lives in Canada, when I brought video up there, smart video we call it, and the folks and I'm not kidding, by the way, up in northern British Columbia, a large credit union said to me, "Well, this is really cool, but my my members like to walk out to the mailbox, especially in winter." And I said, "You mean to get a statement and to get your advertisements?" "Well, yeah." I said, "Okay, well, I'll come back to you in 10 years and see how that's coming along." And, that's a bit of humor. And they were going, "That is kind of funny." I said, "You do have different generations. That being said, you need to communicate with those generations differently because they are different." And so at the end of it, which ones of them are omni members? In other words, they can communicate with you in any sort of way that you choose to, or which ones are very specific and they're not going to communicate with you unless you come at them with the kind of language and the channel in which they communicate. So patience is short in the Z generations.
I also find it interesting how often I never hear people ask, just point blank ask, like, "How would you like us to communicate with you?" It's crazy to me how we continue to make assumptions that people want to be communicated with the exact same way instead of just explicitly asking, like, "How do you want to be communicated? Here's the options: email, phone, text. Like, tell me how you want it."
I communicate, James, with more CEOs late at night via text, and that's their choice, not mine.
Oh, I bet. That's how I would choose it. Well, so let's finish off the podcast by asking you this last question. Tell me an experience that you've had with a company or a financial institution that just does really good at utilizing multi-channel communication.
Well, that's a difficult question because everyone is on a different journey. They really are. And a lot of it is restricted by budget. A lot of it is restricted by the board and the vision that they might have and how they're going to do that. And I think sometimes, especially when I get into the conversation on big data, and I say, "Who do you want to be when you grow up?" And I ask this to a credit union, and it might be a $1 billion plus asset shop. And they go, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, look, once my 3 daughters and my wife shopped at Amazon, the local department store never saw them again." So that's who you want to be. And can we all be Amazon? No, not a chance. But I'm going to tell you a little story about a firm that used to deliver pizzas all the time. Do you know who that might be? Who's a pizza delivery firm?
I mean, it could be any of them. Pizza Hut, Domino's. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of them.
Domino's, yeah. And do you remember the ads that they put out on TV about sledgehammers and the whole bit, tearing their stores apart?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when in fact, no one went into the store other than to get a carry out, because if I let them deliver it and I didn't get it in 30 minutes, it was free. And well, they had to get away from that because they had lawsuits, liability, cities on top of them from the police department, the whole bit. They then went to what they considered to be a data company. And that experience, they are you can email them, you can text them, you can call them, you can do any of those things. And when I tell a credit union, you want to be Domino's, don't you? What are you talking about? We don't sell food. It's like they don't see themselves selling food either. They see themselves as a technology company. And that, in my mind, is who you want to be. And the ads that you see on Domino's today, it's about they will find you wherever you are. And it's geolocation, location. If I am on a beach in Waikiki, Hawaii, and there is a Domino's store within 10 miles, I will have that pizza delivered right to my phone. Now, think about that. That's huge. And that's the experience that you want. That is truly the experience you want. So I didn't answer your question about the experience I've had.
You did, though. You did answer.
Yeah. You want to get into fast food, but it's financial products, and it's not frozen. They're fresh delivered by your preference.
Well, Charlie, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I would love to have you back again in the near future. I think you did an incredible job. So thank you again.
Yeah, my pleasure, James. Next time I can tell you about Smart Video, which is incredible. And I'll leave you with this little tidbit. Imagine an experience where you have a 47% open rate on an email. Why? Because there's a video that's personalized in it versus, say, 21%. 21% of people will open an email, they don't get through it. Whereas I can enhance it to 47%, and I can get a click-through rate of 15%, calling them to action, versus a 3% average call to action. Those are things that you pick up and say, I think I'm going to move my tent.
Charlie, what's a good way for credit unions, banks, or really anyone to get a hold of you?
Cell phone, texting me, quite frankly. You really want to talk to me? Text me. I'll give my cell phone out. It's 206-399-9332, or you can get me by pigeon or email, and that's charlie.peterson@alliedsolutions.net. I answer both, one quicker than the other. I'll leave it up to you on which one is quicker.
Thanks so much, Charlie, for joining us.